Cool. It is 10:30. All right. Welcome, everyone. I cannot believe you are here at 10:30 on a Thursday to listen about Final Fantasy rating at a convention where there's like musical guests, but I do appreciate that. But Final Fantasy XIV has like the most dedicated fans, and so it is just so cool that you're all here. You're all gathered in one place. Awesome. So let's get at it. This is succeeding at Final Fantasy XIV rating to succeed at life. It is, long story short, a panel about soft skills. I am not going to be going over spoilers. I'm not going to be going over any particular mechanics or whatever. This is going to be about building yourself. First of all, who am I to tell you all of this? First and foremost, a games writer, and some of you are like, oh, that disqualifies you from high-end content. That's not my full-time thing. Actually, this is my claim to fame, though. They stole my quote for that. They hit me up January last year, like, hey, can we use this sometime for accolades? I'm like, sure. 11 months later, I see this. I'm just like, oh, my God. So that's great. I've done a lot of customer-facing work and over many years, just because many people do that throughout their lives. So Kumon, if you know, you know, like a theme park, a boardwalk, Starbucks. I'd say most notably axe throwing before the pandemic, which is, I think everyone should try it. Like anyone can do it so long as you're willing and able. And also Museum of Ice Cream in New York City, like during the end of the pandemic. And let me tell you, that was a ride. It was a lot of just, there are a lot of things where you come out of it and you're like, wow, I really came out of that better than I went in. A lot of person skills. I've been doing role-playing for 16 years. There's a lot of person-to-person talking if you're with the right people. I've been doing Final Fantasy XIV for over 4 years. This is our 3-year anniversary of our static, not just of rating, of our static being together. I'm very proud of that. Shout out to Rare. If you do Crystal Exploratory missions, that's the guy who took over is our raid leader, and he's fantastic. I've been doing con panels for over 12 years. I think my first success was like Vocaloid at Otakon in 2012. So if I know nothing else, it's how to talk to people in a room. And Ultimate Legend, by the way, and people are like, oh, it's not that intense. But look, I mean, I like showing my cat girl. Like, this is literally my phone screen. It took us, we are very casual static. We raid 3 to 4 hours a week, one session. So it took us 5 or 6 months to get through Ultimate Legend, Ultimate Weapon Ultimate, which is called Uwu. I will be referring to it as Uwu, because it is great shorthand. But yeah, we are a very patient, relatively casual crew. But what I'm going to be talking about here kind of applies at any level, just from kind of talking to people over the years about not just Final Fantasy reading, also World of Warcraft reading, stuff like that, where a lot of people came from. And also, here's my cat girl. I need a cat girl slide. I know you all would take a slide for your Warrior of Light if you could. It's a great bit. Everyone. All right, so what will this panel cover? Like I mentioned, soft skills. They are very important in day-to-day life. This is the formal Wikipedia definition. Psychosocial skills is kind of like the key here. Things about your mind, but also like dealing with other people, dealing with day-to-day situations. And these are important to life. No matter what career path you go into, you're going to want to know a lot of this stuff. And it's going to be a lot in the context of Final Fantasy XIV. And I did, by the way, ask like 3 or 4 people for advice. The people I got back, one of them was Frosty. If you know him, he does the world race. Fantastic person. And he kind of just reflected what the point of this is that soft skills are very transferable. You are dealing with 7 people every single time you go into raid. And these are all skills that you can just bring with you, right? So also, ground rules. Just because I feel like setting these is very important. There's a stream, please behave. Please, I'm sorry. I'm sure you all have great commentary, but like unless it's severely urgent, and I've fact-checked this, please don't, like if somebody's like having a heart attack, please, you can pause, but I probably cannot hear you from here. It's not you, it's me. This is all ages, King of PC. I might try to get questions, PG, try to get questions in the end. And finally, I am not the be-all, end-all of raid experiences. Everyone's mileage may vary. I have never had drama, which is a fortune in and of itself. But you will experience different things. Everyone will experience something different in their time doing things like raiding. You're allowed to take notes, you're allowed to take pictures. These go up on VODs, eventually down the line on the MAGFest YouTube too. Cool. So, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about, first of all, what you're doing leading up to starting to raid. First of all, why raid? There are many reasons to raid. Half of them have to do with pride. But shinies are a great one. Shinies are a great motivator, right? You get an achievement, you get a weapon that's really always literally shiny. If you do 3 of them, you get another title. If you do 3, what's it called, ultimates, you get another title. Like, what's good? I think it's like triple legend. It's triple legend. Sometimes you just want to hang out with the squad. That is a perfectly good reason to want to raid. Like, seriously, it is a great time to socialize. Also, just having something to do. In this economy, having something to do will save your sanity. So it's just a great way to kill time. It's video game. What else? I mean, that's what video games are for. And sometimes you need something as simple as something like this. I remember there was drama for context, this is literally a giant axolotl is the current reward for the current series of raids. And people were like, oh, it's so cute. Raid mounts shouldn't be that cute. Nya. It is keeping me sane as we slowly progress through the current tier, because we started late. We're going a little bit late, but we're having a fantastic time. And who doesn't want a giant axolotl to just ride around the lands with, right? And you can just be looking for something as cute as that. Like, you just pop open a window, keep it there, and be like, that's what I want. All right, I'm quizzing you on this in 120 seconds. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. So there are things you need to know about, like, generally raids. I don't think I'm going to go over most of this, or retouch on it, but, like, it's good to know vocab. The ones I will probably be saying regularly are a static, which is just your group. That's the people you're with. It's static because it tends not to change, right? So it's hopefully that same 7 or 8 people every single week. Obviously, things happen, but, this is who you're relying on. Prog champ, it's just short for progression, right? When you say I'm progging, that means I am playing this in order to learn how to progress through it. This is basically the saying, hey, I'm just hitting my head against these mechanics repeatedly. What else? I'm going to say tier a few times. I'm going to say poll a few times. A tier is just a group of currently released raids, or at the time. Polling is when your person goes in, attacks the boss, and starts the fight. It's each time they attempt that. An instance, just instance. I feel like that's kind of common. Not Final Fantasy, MMO stuff, and also rotation. I'm gonna say learn your rotation a few times, but like people genuinely don't think they should learn their rotation for endgame, so you're gonna have a bad time. So yeah, there's one of the things about vocab like this is that you are going to take a few times to remember it. If you hear anything when you're with your group, always ask what it means, because and I'll actually get into this later. So, finding a group. This is kind of a two-parter. One part is like the practical of raiding. There's a few different ways you can find a group. Just like in anything, don't rely on one specific way to find what you need, right? Different things will work for different purposes. Party Finder is kind of unreliable to a lot of people. You can either do pickup groups or you can search for a static on them. Personally, I like to do pickup groups when I just need practice, right? But I'm not going to rely on them every week. Some people are like, absolutely like, oh, I'm going to challenge myself to progress only in pickup groups, which is, I'm sure, actually fun, but I don't have the patience, and I commend people who do that. Static searching kind of overlaps with raid finding Discords and Reddits. And there are tons of Discords, there's tons of Reddits where you can go in, find a group. There's a lot of slang to it, and it does take us a little bit to adjust and to learn what they expect from you, what they need. Logs, for the record, I am not officially advocating for mods, but like people will look at your raid scores and like your DPS and stuff like that, which is unfortunate. There are things in both raiding and life where like they shouldn't be looking at it, but they do look at it. Sometimes it's your name, which is a little weird, but yeah. Also free companies, obviously there are a lot of free companies out there that will raid, that'll set up groups. I think that's personally, if you're going in from like a ground level, I would recommend free companies personally, and I'll get into this in like a second, you are usually understanding of what their vibes are, what their goals are. And sometimes they become your besties, or sometimes your besties become your free company, but like I personally think raiding's best with your friends, but that's not always possible. You don't always have like 12 friends who are thinking about raiding, right? So when you go into these, no matter what, you're always kind of thinking about a few things, right? First of all, I recommend chatting with the leader or whoever's doing the recruiting for your group, because you want to know, like, what are the goals of this group? Are they going to be going 2, 3, 4 times a week? Are they casual? Are they very strict about feedback and DPS and just little nuances? Like, these things do catch up in like a very long-term basis. Even like 2 or 3 raids in, you're gonna be like, oh, maybe this isn't it. And that's fine. Do not underestimate your gut check when it comes to certain things. When it comes to a lot of things, don't underestimate like your own mentality to the group and theirs towards you, because that just, if you aren't on the same level, a lot of things are going to fall apart very, very quickly. And by the way, this is, especially speaking for this is a hobby, guys. You don't need to stick to the group like that urgently. There are more people with your goals, especially as the population goes up. All right, we're going to Prague time. Yay. Let's see if they're going to give me the YouTube video. Yes. This is my favorite.
I'm in the British Museum.
I'm at Disney World.
I'm in Gibraltar. I'm at the Computer History Museum.
I'm at the summit of Mount Evans. I'm at Space Camp. I'm off to the Arctic. 3 weeks.
This will happen. It's like a given. It's like everyone's going to be all over the place. I'm just preparing you for the actual Prague here, for the continuation of our situation. Where is it going with that? All right. In order to not be that person, you want to be prepared. I personally find it very useful, just in life and in general. I'm going to say just in life too, by the way, so many times if you haven't noticed. Have a checklist, right? Because it turns out there's not just fighting involved in your raiding. Everything is about preparation. You want food, you want your correct gear. There's going to be like BIS gear that's like, you have to use this material with that. You want to check that in advance. You don't want to wait an hour or a half an hour till the battle, till you really get into that. As a personal example, by the way, when I went to go over this one more time like 2 or 3 hours ago, I booted up my computer, it gave me a black screen, I clicked it 5 times, it gave me the doot, doot, doot noise. I'm like, what's going on? It tried to update on me. I'm like, whew. So if I tried to boot this computer up here and now, we would have been sitting here for like 10, 15 minutes, like trying to figure that out. And then all the other stuff I had to do with the volunteers. So be prepared. Do more than you need to sometimes. Do some reading and prep. I'm going to get into, like, when I say prep, I mean learning. I am really going to get into that in a minute. But do what you can before the raid. And just kind of know your role. Know what you're able to contribute to the group. Make sure they know that. Know your capabilities. Know your limits. If you are going to need a break like 2 hours in because your dog needs a walk, yeah, like communicate that kind of thing. And yeah. There's like 8 or 9 bongos in that. Our raid leader, I forgot to get one from him, but he has a whole macro that's like, do you have food, gear check, yada yada, go pee, etc. Be prepared, because, yeah. So And just to kind of bridge that over, I got another quote from Frosty. A major part of our success depends on the people and our ability to work with them, right? So you can guess where this is going. Atmospheres, life and Final Fantasy atmospheres can benefit from good communication, time management, problem solving, leadership, and empathy, which gets me into my next point. Communication. I'm going to be honest, I deeply underemphasize this in this PowerPoint because I'm not going to try to teach you phrases for certain situations, but it is good to like kind of inflect, like to know what your strengths are in communicating with others. And so these are examples of ways you can keep clear and concise communication with your raid. So check in, give a heads up if you're going to be late, especially if you know it like an hour in advance, and especially if like it hits the time and you haven't been able to and you're able to get a quick word in. Be clear and concise. I cannot emphasize enough how good conciseness is. Everyone's there for the same reason. Be patient with people. Be kind. And I couldn't just make a whole hour that just says be kind 50 times for rating, because it's a hobby, guys. Please, it's a hobby. And generally speaking, like everyone is coming, even if you're all there for the same reason, everyone is coming from something different. So you don't want to assume that if somebody's able to take something that you're giving. And finally, if you have questions, ask questions. This is so important. Like, people are scared of asking questions because they don't want to be seen as unprepared or stupid, but I'm going to be honest, sometimes things come up. Things really do come up, and being able to ask a question to build up like that particular moment is so helpful. So leads me to my next point. I also got Mr. Happy to give a quote or two. And he said, when I was in high school, somebody asked my math teacher, why do I have to learn this? And she said, like this, emphasis is mine, by the way. Learning something specific isn't as important as proving you can learn in the first place. And that's probably my favorite part about like becoming a raider. Because let's be honest, this is what happens at school. This is literally, I'm sure half of this room at school. And also me when my raid leader starts like explaining something. I'm sorry, Rare, it's not you, it's me. Everyone knows that. Yeah, that's what happens very often. Now, the concept of learning to learn is kind of, generally in life, a deeply underappreciated one. And it's something that really, really comes with raiding, and with a lot of time, a lot of practice. There's no shortcut to being good. There's also no shortcut to learning your Final Fantasy class. Please just do the MSQ. Do all the fights. They introduce mechanics. They introduce boss mechanics. They give you abilities. Read your toolkits. Practice, right? And everyone does learn differently. And that's something I am about to give like 4 or 5 different examples of that. It's doing it again. Hold on, let's just get it again. Dude. And I'm sure that's me sitting in a panel too sometimes. I'm sorry. All right, moving on. Sorry. So this is a selection of ways to learn, a small selection. The Balance I recommend has a lot of great tools. It's a Discord and a website now. They opened up a website in like the last year or two, which has been a fantastic resource. A lot of YouTube tutorials. This one's fun. I don't have a picture. I couldn't get a picture, but I've done this in the past with my I won't say free company. It's not my free company, but my Static, where we all go into a house and somebody will have furniture set up downstairs and we all stand around the furniture. Somebody sets up a party and sets up markers. As long as you are learning, that is what counts. And also nobody else is getting hurt. Yeah, as long as you are practicing and coordinating with your team and getting that in your head, that's important. And then also you just have, the last one just is supposed to mean practice. Sometimes all you can do is just go in over and over and practice and get it down. Because especially, and I'm speaking as a black mage player, which means, woo, but also if you know, you know. I get like 2.5 second cast times for most of my attacks, right? And learning it is sometimes just going in, doing it over and over, tripping up and realizing, hey, maybe I can do this instead. That's really just the number one way to do it. Now, there are other ways to remember, though. Like, people will do all sorts of things to learn, to teach, to show off. These are great. These are just, I can't say the actual name, but like FFXIV raid diagrams that look like fun posts. This is, I believe this is P2S and then P3S. Yes. It is a great time. I think there's one, and they'll name them appropriately. For example, the next one I'm about to show is the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This is P12, yes, P12. I was going to say P12 because I was like, oh, it's Eden, right? Yeah. Sometimes you have to do what it takes to remember the strat, okay? And this is, by the way, this is like the most efficient strat as far as I know, unless you're blasting it down. But like people just come up with these. We are getting the raid diagrams and Dawn Trails. I'm very excited about that. But in the meantime, we have had to cope with like stuff like this. So I'm sure now we're going to get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson faces on official maps, which is an improvement. I'll take that. And if you have done Ultimate Weapon Ultimate, you know what I'm about to mention. This is Roblox. And I'm not joking, this is one of the best tools I've ever seen for learning something. Literally, somebody replicated. So I have to explain context here because it's like there's levels of genius going on here. Because an Ultimate Weapon, when you do an Ultimate, it's basically a series, as people will say, oh, it's a series of extreme trials or a series of savage trials, which is fine. But then when you have like, when you're on like the fourth or fifth part, you can't necessarily regularly get to that. Garuda Prog, if you know, you know. But because of that, people are like, well, we have to get this in somehow. We have to mechanically learn this somehow. And this is the solution. They basically programmed a Roblox program, a Roblox instance that replicates, I forgot what it's called. I forgot to put the, what was it? Suppression, thank you. This is the only time Ultimate Suppression is 3 different, all the primals from Realm Reborn drop down and just drop AoEs in a certain sequence. And you have to know exactly where all the AoEs are going versus where they're not. And it is so annoyingly precise that if you don't know it by heart, you are not going to, you're going to have to go all the way back to the beginning of the fight, which is like 7 or 8 minutes, which is bad. So this has that, and it has AI bots that'll fill in spots. And we did this so many times. I did it on my own because there's bots in there. Like, I personally have really, really, really bad under-medicated ADHD, among other things. So something like this, when I say whatever it takes to learn, do what you have to. I do recommend watching a video once or twice, because maybe you'll recall something, but yeah. Anyway, another thing is taking breaks. So mid-raid, I personally recommend taking any kind of break. Water break, food break, pee break. Please go pee, girl. Like, please. That is bad for your kidney, by the way, if you hold in your pee. Go if you have to. You can even leave this panel if you have to pee. I'm not going to stop you. I can't stop you. I'm not your raid leader. And just in general. And I think this is very not talked about much, or I think people talk about it and it goes over heads and people don't take it seriously. But don't always feel like you have to be in the current tier, because like it's a video game. If you want to try it again sometime, you can always sync it with the static. You can do like Party Finder, but like burnout is real no matter what you're doing. Like there are so many other things out there besides what you are doing, like in Final Fantasy XIV, and even they say take a break from Final Fantasy XIV sometimes. Like go play other games. And they would tell you right now, go play Final Fantasy XVI, but you know, he might, the director might be biased towards the executive producer on that one. Yeah, and this is my raid leader. I asked him for advice. This is the piece he gave me. Final Fantasy XIV is at its peak when you're enjoying it for the sake of enjoying it and not out of obligation. Take breaks. Don't feel like you have time to do every single thing in the game all the time, at all times. Yeah, and if you are going to take a break, like that's where communication comes back in. If you have a raid that's open, punitive, whatever, you know, they're usually willing to work with you on that kind of thing. Maybe get a filler, but yeah, just do what you have to. You should be enjoying what you have to. Now, that doesn't always apply for everything in life, because sometimes you just have to be there for the money, right? But, like, recognize your limits, basically. All right, we're about to get into something a little different. All right, we're doing stretch break. I want to emphasize 2 points. First, yeah, he's in the back already getting ready. But I will give you a tip because I have friends who are, I hope they are watching, I don't know if they're watching actually. But somebody who I know is a professional artist, a raider, and a role player had to take a break because she had to get like surgery here. This is real, like this is real pain, okay? This might be the closest thing to a heart scum I'm gonna talk about. So there are several stretches. I'm gonna demonstrate at least one stretch, right? This is audience engagement. So one, the kind of low level is you take your hand, you put it out, and then what you're going to do is you're going to kind of put your other hand and pull that back toward you. Make sure the tips of your fingers are pulled a little bit too. You feel that, right? You want to feel it even more? All right. So make sure you're a little bit clear on this side. My roommate puts up with this all the time. I tell him to take stretch breaks. Put your arms up, and then to put your fingers out sideways a little bit. Now make sure you have room before you do this. You're going to pull slowly like you're diving to the sides, and you're going to feel it immediately. If you are straining, you need to do it more. Yeah, I know, right? Hi, it's me. Woo! Also, one more that's really good is you take your hand, you put it out all the way forward in front of you, put your thumb in like this, and then wrap your fingers around your thumb. And actually, you can do it with both hands too. I'm going to do it with both hands. Do that, and then pull your hand forward. Pull, right? Like right here. Yeah, right. Yeah, so this is important so you don't have to get carpal tunnel surgery when you're like 35 years old, okay? Do stretch breaks. Also, I recommend just, a good old like, oh, I just cracked my back doing that. Just, all the way back. Like just, stretch up, wiggle your fingers, arch your back a little bit. You feel that? That feels good, right? All right, and just literally anything, like get up, walk around, do I have a million stretches I like to do personally because that's like my physical stimulation is just doing a nice big stretch for like 15 minutes at a time. But it is important to your health. Like take care of yourself. Because this is the only body you have. You can't roll a new tune on your body. If you mess it up doing raiding and video games and writing and typing and using your smartphone. So yeah, take breaks. Do what you have to. Drink water. Stay hydrated. Also for MAGFest. Yeah. So that's that. Great advice. And this is good because we are about to get into a little bit more of I don't think people talk about this very often. I think it's very important is learning constructive criticism. Yay! Let me tell you, there are very few times, very few situations where I've ever heard somebody be like, oh, I've actually learned how to give and take constructive criticism. So here we go. Constructive criticism is a building activity. It's not meant to just drag somebody. I personally think, and I've done this before, you can drag somebody constructively, but and that's the best way to do it, but we're not dragging here. We're here to help each other succeed in a raid. So what is constructive criticism? It is, number one, first and foremost, as I've experienced it, based on provable observations. You just take this and say hey, this is what's happening. And it's about an action. It's about something somebody has done. It's not about the person per se, unless they're, kind of being a dick. Sorry, language. It understands why the action does or doesn't work, and it possibly gets into that, but you don't really have to. But it does help so you can build back up on it, right? Which gets to the next point. it can usually be improved in some manner. I think that's how, I don't think you can always give an immediate solution, but it is helpful to come up with maybe speculation. And it just uplifts the person, right? In this case, at least. Because you are all raiding together. You don't want to be mean. You don't want to be the reason why their mental health is declining, and they dip from your static. And you're like, wow, I wonder why your static has such high turnover. What it is not based on emotions. So you got to sit there for a second, take a deep breath, and sort out why you are upset at this thing. It's not a personal attack. It's not an overarching conclusion without any kind of substance. It goes back to provable observations. And it's not an attempt to get rid of somebody, per se. Sometimes you have to, but that's not what's going on in this case. We want to communicate first and foremost. Learning to learn, communication, all the things we talked about before. That should be part of what criticism does. And also, by the way, I am not the be-all, end-all of criticism, but as a writer, let me tell you, editors with good constructive criticism are like my lifeblood, right? I live for them. And I try to be that person, and it's let me tell you, like, just being able to give criticism, like, will make so many people, like, just trust you, and, like, you want to, mutual understanding and this and that. So these are tips for just building good criticism, is to directly note an anecdote. Explain it's kind of repeating what was on the last slide, but just to be more formal about it. Explain what didn't work. It's preferable you give suggestions that are actionable, like be reasonable. Like obviously if your DPS is low, you're not gonna dip out and change out your materia. And it helps, and I mean, you can say that. And it helps to kind of include like the positives. There is something called the sandwich method in a lot of these discussions. I think that's good for one-off criticisms. So like if you're in a class and what it is you give a positive, you give the critiques, and then you loop back to something positive. I don't think that's necessary when you are constantly engaging with the person's like situation, but it is a good guideline in regards to understanding what you should be giving the person. Remember, it builds the team. And sometimes you are on the other end of the criticism, and it happens, and I think it's something everybody should get comfortable with. It is such a valuable life skill to be comfortable understanding what is constructive criticism and dealing with it. So understand that, I forgot to put another asterisk on the bottom one, but understand that it is criticism, it's not an attack on you, right? Because they want to see you not mess up. And everyone messes up. It's life. I think messing up, not like giant mistakes, but like sometimes you learn best by making mistakes. Listen with intent. Like really unpack what they are saying, kind of beat by beat. If you don't understand what is being told to you, ask questions. Like, hey, you said my DPS is low. Like, do you know any guides or what? Actually, I don't know if that's, I have a good example hiding here somewhere. Recognize what can and can't be changed, and then you actually have to work at it. It's not enough to know the problem. Like they say, knowing the problem is the first step, but that's the first step. And then sometimes you just have to know when it's not good criticism, right? Because people will be mean for the sake of being mean sometimes. So when it's not, like, is there proof that this is happening? Is there a tangible problem? Is there a why? And where is it coming from? I don't get into this that much, but like good faith and bad faith is really a very valuable soft life skill. Like, is this person just being mean because they want to feel better than you, or are they coming from a place of trying to amend things? And I actually I have notes over here. I totally forgot notes. So a bad piece of criticism would be like, hey, you moved like an idiot through the floor during this attack. Do you even know what it is? If somebody approaches it like that, sometimes you just got to be like, well, what do you mean? And that's probably where the good criticism ends up coming from. Hey, when we were dodging this attack, you're going to the right spot, but you went through another attack on the way over. Be sure you go around this particular marking on the ground to avoid being hit on the way over. And that's a good point of criticism. This is something that you can understand what your issue is, understand why it's an issue, and then there is something that needs to be done. Now, as a black mage, it's just like, oh, well, this is the quickest way. And sometimes you do have to adjust yourself a bit to that kind of situation. You have to adjust your rotation. You have to move your ley line timing if you're a black mage. I can't believe I have to move my lane lines. You can't move your ley lines. I hate that. But anyway, and that is just a part of life, is just growing, changing, understanding problems and solving them. Problem solving. And this is really my last main point. I went through this way faster than I anticipated. But I do have an anecdote here. When I was kind of like mulling over what to talk about for this panel, I used to be a Dota 2 writer. I used to have a site with, this is going back to my internship back in like 2016. And I found an old piece talking about, and if you know Dota, you know Sir Action Slacks, who is, which is probably phasing nobody in this room. But when I say he's like a literal piece of sunshine, I mean he's like in both real life and online, he's a literal piece of sunshine. So what happened was he was challenged by another content creator to improve his ranking in Dota, because it's a MOBA and people really care about their rankings. So when people started looking over his VODs and getting to critiques, and like the content creator and everyone was like, here's some valuable, very, very valuable things, like, oh, this person's falling off at the end of the game. But there was one thing people collectively started to realize, and I think the other creator started to realize at Purge. He was untiltable. He had such a positive attitude that it affected his teammates, and they would win games just by not falling off at the end, because what happens when you go a long time with something is that you are more probably likely to tilt, right? You're more likely to do stupid decisions because you're not thinking straight. But when you keep a positive mental attitude, as we called it, it will literally affect everyone around you. And you feel that at like a convention like MAGFest, where everyone is here, everyone's in a good mood, right? And that puts you in a good mood. It just vibes, vibes. And when I say vibes are important, I really do mean like vibes are very important. Our static has been together for like 3 years. Everyone kind of prioritizes it because it is 100% vibes, which is something I wish for everybody, honestly. I hope you all find a good static with good vibes one day. Or it's something you love with good vibes. A good job with good vibes. A decent job or a bad job that happens to have good vibes for some reason. Maybe you are the good vibes. So I could not put this in here because Mr. Happy kind of gave me a whole info dump on it. But in raiding, we're aware we're putting a lot of time into it, but we're learning how to cooperate, have group meetings, time management, approach multiple teaching styles. And by the way, I got this literally this week, and I've been trying to build an outline for a while, so this really was just him saying this independently. Unfurl the puzzle in front of us. We've learned, we've improved, and we created and shared experience that may not be changing the world, but has allowed us to improve ourselves. I get not wanting to read because you're not looking for that kind of experience. You want to play games and focus what you find fun. And emphasis mind. Even through all the pain, we are having our own fun. We also find personal satisfaction and growth in taking on a new challenge. That way of thinking is important in everyday life, as that drive allows us to open up new opportunities for ourselves and be the one to blaze our own paths. And this is like the end reflection section of like, oh, this is what I learned, yada yada. Just raiding for me personally has been like a super fulfilling experience the past few years. In a good and bad way, you are very likely to just learn so much about yourself. Me realizing maybe I just need to learn things a different way and be honest about how I take in information, approaching it in new ways. Maybe one day getting medicated when the healthcare costs in America don't go up. This is totally not a political push. And it's been great on the fun side of things, so like having friends, having something to do. But really the takeaway for this, besides the life skills, is that it's so important for personal growth to just have something in your life that challenges you, that's stimulating, that's fulfilling for literally any reason. Sometimes a reason is this. I love this guy, but I literally got him this or last week or something. He's like the soft. And like literally, I'm just like, oh, I just want to like this is my excuse for having an axolotl in my household now. And I don't think it is for everyone. I don't think, like, if it's not something you have time for or you think you have the patience for, there's no harm in not doing it, because there is so much out there in the world that will like stimulate you in a different way, whether it's artwork, whether it's role playing or writing fiction or fan fiction or whatever. And as long as you are growing from it, I think it's worth your time. And again, a lot of these things carry over into those things that you are going to do in your life. But if you're able to do something like that, where you are with other people and you're all building each other up, I super recommend it. And it can be anything like LARPing. It can be like Dungeons and Dragons, which God knows Dungeons and Dragons needs a lot of these skills, right? As somebody who's DM'd before. And by the way, like also, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but like if you want, like you can always come back to this. If you're applying for a job and they ask you, what do you do in your spare time? Talk about raiding. Especially if you're a WoW raider too, by the way. Especially if you're a WoW raid leader. Because again, a lot of these skills you are going to encounter at your job. And if you learn how to fluently talk about it in a way that impresses somebody you're getting interviewed by. Like I literally was talking to I think like a Final Fantasy DJ last night, and she was saying like, I got hired talking about my WoW guild. So yeah, just take, like, more than anything, just take something with you from your experiences. And if anything else, learn how to dish out criticism. I don't know, that's a skill. I am actually done way earlier than I thought. That's my info if you ever want. And I think, yeah. If you want to come up and talk about, have a question, I don't know what kinds of questions there could be, but if you do have a question about this sort of thing, the microphone is open up here. We got a whole 15 plus minutes. I feel that, yeah. What's up?
So, role-specific question. Do you think there are specific soft skills outside of what you talked about already for healers?
Oh, that is so good. Yes. There are absolutely certain roles, and thank you. That could have been a whole 2 slides, right? Healers in specific, the constructive criticism doubly applies here because you are saving that person's life constantly, but if they don't adjust, you're never going to be able to heal them back to life, right? So definitely the criticism, definitely like communicating, talking about placement, talking about just coordination and communication is especially important for a healer. And that's usually why they tend to be the raid leads, as I've noticed, is because they are the ones like at the top of the food chain in regards to like who's living and who's dying. You're kind of at their mercy, and if you fuck up, they're not going to show mercy. So, sorry, language. But yeah, that's...
Thanks.
Yep.
This isn't really related to the panel. Do you frequent the Balmung quicksands as a role player?
No, I don't. Not the quicksand. I'm going to actually give role-playing advice. There are open worlds out there. There are places where people hang out with the tag on Balmung and Mateus. Not the quicksands. Do not go to the quicksands. The shout chat is poisonous.
What's wrong with it?
What?
What's wrong with it?
It became a meme, and then everyone decided to do meme tourism, basically. There's no actual substance to it anymore because people took it over to be memeing.
Yeah, hi, I'm the guy who picked Mateus without knowing that. It's caused some problems before.
It has. A question?
Specifically, I guess I wanted to ask, I'm not finished MSQ, not there to engage with this particularly yet. Mm-hmm. What are ways you would recommend getting better at jobs while working your way to that? Because I want to start, I can't hop into quite these raids, but I still want to get better at my jobs, what I'm doing, and just make sure I'm on the ball so that way I kind of have a head start when I do reach this point. That's
a fantastic question. I don't know if the mic caught it, but it was basically, how can I learn how to do my role while I'm progressing through the game? And that is just to do the MSQ. Do the MSQ, do the trials, because the trials and raids at the end of each expansion tend to introduce the ones for the next expansion that show up in the main story. And also read your tooltips. Read what your class does, because there are some things you don't realize are there and that are very important to your rotation as you continue. I will say it will be awful for a lot of the time because they add new skills and they kind of pay half mind to how these things progress as you learn the game. Like Black Mage is awful at level 70. Like God knows, Uwu was a pain to prog because you're stuck at level 70 because that's the sync. But just be sure you're paying attention. You learn from dungeons. You figure out rotations as they go along. The balance and other things will give you guides. And just be mindful. That's really the number one thing. And for learning in general, just be mindful. So,
yeah. Starting class was Warrior, so that's definitely...
Oh, Warrior's great.
Yeah, but tanking everything on a first run is interesting.
Yeah, I'd say tank is actually not a bad starter. So, all right, thank you. Hi.
Hey there. When you're first making the jump from casual and into raiding, and you're in a nervous place about your skills, you don't trust your skills yet, you don't know what to expect from, say, Party Finder, what are some green flags to look for in, like, a party that will match your vibes or something like that?
Oh, that's a great question. Because I haven't really had to do that much hunting, right? Because we just kind of went into it. I think you're usually looking more for red flags. I would say logs are kind of a red flag if you're a beginner because they're kind of expecting something higher from you. But that's more like your mileage may vary. I'd say a free company is usually a good place to start, though, because you get some time to be with the people and like understand who they are and what they're going for. And people who give you that time, I think, are just a really good red flag for really just anything. Like if they're willing to sit down and chat with you and say like, hey, we are willing to have you. And we have had actually people who last year we introduced somebody who I think was, if I remember right, he was tanking, and he'd never done a high-end content, and he joined us directly for ultimate content. Wow. Uwu isn't that hard, honestly. Uwu is a great introductory ultimate. It teaches you like the patience, but it's not as difficult. But he really went from like nothing to clearing with us. It just really, again, just a group who's willing to like sit down, let you learn, are just green flags. But again, I am not the only raider to ever exist, and you may be able to jump into like kind of a mid-tier group and be like, oh, I'm kind of learning. I'd say also just do extreme content too.
That makes me feel better, especially because I'd be going in as a tank.
Ooh, yeah. Tanking is definitely, it's learning. It's really just learning. Like definitely learn how to learn because you will have to memorize a lot of those moves.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello. Do you have any tips on like building a group or vetting players to join your group?
Oh, good question. I actually. Yeah, no, there's no way that's going to be toxic. It's just accepting anyone with high DPS. No way. The question was, any tips for building a group? I actually don't really have that kind of advice on me, unfortunately. I have them. Yeah, I'd say just go through Discords, go through free companies. Build a strong foundation of people you want to be with. Okay. Like a core few players who have like the same goals and attitudes as you is just like the consistent like number one thing I've seen. Because even if you have like one or two players that are off, at least the rest of you can like kind of coordinate through that. Okay. That's what I've seen through like some friends who've had like weird rocky groups that made it anyway. So.
And do you have any other ultimates that you're working on at the moment?
I wish. No, because I haven't had the time to do more ultimates. I do want to do Omega Protocol, but I know that is a pain on Black Mage. Unless you are... Yeah. Yeah, it's like, unless you're like, if you're a Black Mage on this Echelon, you can do it. If you're like anywhere else, it's... Lord.
Howdy, we talked to Miku this morning.
Yes, we did. Oh my God, I remember Soapbox. By the way, if you're here, do Soapbox.
Y'all
it's great.
Gotcha. No, basically, I downloaded the Discords, or I guess I joined the Discords that like help with party finders and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm looking into it for the very specific purpose of completing Dragon Song.
Ooh.
What? I haven't joined a group. I haven't even gotten through P8S.
They're working on it. They're getting there. What's up?
Yeah, so
I was basically like, I've been having a hard time finding like kind of a launch point to be like, hey, I basically need to be coached.
Yeah,
pretty hard. So
Dragon Song is relatively recent content. Have you done other high end stuff or no?
not really. Like
Yeah.
I did a party finder for P8S. I'm pretty sure that's like the vampire guy. But
Right.
which is the required one I need to do in order to unlock DSR.
Yeah.
So
Oh, P4. P4 is a vampire guy. Yeah, you're right.
I got 4 and 8 mixed up.
I do that too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but yeah, P4S. Like I need to do that, and apparently we made it like a third of the way through on Party Finder.
Okay.
Which apparently isn't that bad.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good for Party Finder. I'll say that. But I mean,
I
also
was just
P4.
trying to find something like I have a very targeted focus. So I was just wondering if you had anything like kind of to guide me that way.
Yeah. Ultimate party finding is a lot different than other party finding. I will say
Yeah.
that is like I have to be completely honest here. That is a leap because you are going to need like the weapons and
Yeah.
the gear in order to. But
Yeah,
I've
I've got friends that can hook me up with gear. They just like making gear for me.
yeah, no, but also so what happens is the end of a tier always gives the highest level weapon at that point. So you might be able to gear up with like the current stuff. They might, but I'd also say take it as an opportunity to go through other high-end content, such as I'd say like build up from extremes to savage to ultimate, because like literally like even just doing an extreme will give you an idea of like the rigor that like is necessary to. And I mean, you're doing do P4. Again, just taking your time with it, and it's going to be there. The content's going to be there.
Yeah.
People really revisit the ultimates just for the sake of doing them, especially like Ultimate Weapon. I know a lot of people who just love to prog Ultimate Coil of Bahamut just because it's fun.
Fair.
UCOB is great. So yeah, I'd say definitely don't rush it. Like enjoy the ride because
Okay.
it's going to be a great ride. If you do find a group that helps you with Dragon Song, take that opportunity.
Yeah, like
but
I get like the added notifications every time DSR comes on. It's like, yeah, but I haven't done P4 yet.
yeah, I'd say work your way through. Do Party
Yeah.
Finder prog for P4. Do some learning. Do what you need to.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Cool.
I gotta get out of line.
Hello.
hello.
Hey, you were talking earlier about how different people might learn in different ways.
Yeah.
Especially for a lot of my later UWU learnings and carrying it into T, which we're progging for right now, wormhole prog, fun. I learned that certain mechanics from the first or after the first part of the fight onward are actually kind of tied to the music. Like I learned to move out of the group to pass Nissies
Yep.
as the horns start blaring in just before the second verse.
Yeah.
On that song, and I learned the timings on dropping Way to the Earth during Titan prog. That was fun, especially during jails.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen to the music. Like all
Definitely.
of that is in concert for a reason.
No, actually, they're right. There are, as you learn, this is another learning to learn point. That's great. You will find ways throughout your prog to learn, like certain cues, certain timings. Because I've been doing music stuff for my whole life, so I understand musical cues and beats and timing and spacing. So I learned to drop like a sharp cast at like a certain point when the instrumentals swell in UWU. Yeah, so that's a good point. Thank you.
Hi there. I know that you're a writer for MMORPG. I was wondering how the communication skills that you've learned through raiding have helped you as a columnist for MMORPG.
That is a fantastic question. And it's really just a culmination of just all the other things I learned in writing. First of all, constructive criticism is so important in writing and anything you do, really. Especially I wouldn't call it like a hard skill. Like, I don't know how to describe writing as a skill, but it is something that will only get better when other people perceive it, right? And just like rating, like you're not going to get better if you're just hitting stone sea sky, which I don't mention, by the way, because it's not a great learning tool as it is. It's so bad. Going back and revisiting things, reading other things. I don't read as much as I should, and I really should, because learning from other sources, like, in case of rating, YouTube, simulators, yada, yada, is so valuable. I mean, I do role playing, but I do nonfiction writing for MMO, so it's way, way, way different. But yeah, I think really just being, I feel like we really could just have a whole panel on learning to learn. And I think that's, like, you probably could have a course on it, like in psychology, but that's just something you're gonna, especially in writing, take with you a lot. So, and every writer needs an editor, by the way. If any writer comes up to, I have an anecdote real quick of, like, there's somebody who was deeply hated in one of my old spaces, and one of the snotty things that they did, and you could see it in their writing, was refuse an editor. Their contract was, I will write for you, but I will not have an editor, and it showed every time. So yeah, please, if you have a writer, get an editor. Have some, even if it's like a cover letter. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening. I really appreciated the panel. So I was wondering, in your personal experience, for somebody who's just getting into raiding, do you think, like, what role do you think would be the easiest to learn, like, especially among DPS per melee versus ranged versus caster ranged, like?
There are some that are bad, but otherwise the answer is your favorite class. Because when it comes down to, like, unless you are trying to, and I don't advocate for it, be in the rankings on FF logs, there's no reason you need to be going extremely hard on something. Like, if you have a group that's willing to help you learn and understand, that's great. You should be taking the time to do other things, like build your gear and, like, have food available, but, like, just if you have any class that can breathe, I don't think there's any class right now that's, like, recommended against, right? Because I know, like, Red Mage was, yeah. Astro, that's the only one, but, like, that's a healer class, and I actually don't know if healer is a great idea for first. Summoner's good. Black Mage isn't bad. It's just it's a very steep hill, but it is doable. Like,
yeah, no, I do Red Mage, but I started off doing E8S as Bard, and then this tier I'm doing Red Mage a lot, and I'm just, like, trying to figure out where the
it's about enjoyment. Just as long as the community isn't saying, like, this class is holding everyone back, you're usually fine. Like, I don't think that's the case at this current moment. So,
all right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, awesome. He is right. This will unfortunately be the last. Actually, it depends.
Yeah, it's really
you stay in line. Yeah.
So, just a little bit of a silly one when you were showing the diagrams. Does anybody here remember Elmo for P3S
Elmo.
at all?
I almost did Elmo. I should have. Elmo strats.
I do not regret. I do not miss it.
That's the thing. If you want to look up Elmo strats, go look up Elmo strats. Do you have a question?
The worst party fighter strats ever. It literally killed, like, P3S killed my raid tier.
It's fantastic.
And it's the only raid tier I've ever done, sadly. I wish I did it anymore.
It was an interesting tier, so. Yeah. All right, now last question.
For a wee baby sprout just starting Stormblood, any advice on learning your rotations, especially if you don't have any particular main class to speak of?
Yeah, actually, so I think I mentioned some of them. Balance is a great one. Icy Veins also, I forgot to mention Icy Veins. That's pretty good. Read your tooltips. People don't read their tool. Like, literally just take, like, 20 minutes just to go through everything and figure it out. But the game usually kind of hands it to you, like, piecewise, so you can kind of piece together what you need. I'd say don't worry about it too much until you get into, like, Shadowbringers, because then things get really complex and you have a lot of stuff. But, like, you kind of have an idea of what your abilities do and how you can kind of work with them. Yeah, and just enjoy the ride, honestly. Like, just play. I think you'll pick it up eventually. So.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you guys so much. You are a wonderful crowd. Good luck in all your endeavors. And have a great MAGFest. I am going to, let's see, trans rights, stay hydrated, test whatever you're taking in. Make sure you cover your drink. Also trans rights.